in the wet lab. So today we're going to just move it one step higher and really talk about some of the problems that Adrian alluded to, that when you do cataract surgery, you want to know what to do when problems start. So we're going to have a full day of complications and challenging cases, starting fairly simple to the very complex this afternoon. So this morning, I'm going to talk about the anterior capsule as my first talk. Now you all know and you all fear posterior capsule rupture, right? And I've given Sunbek's going to talk to you for about half an hour, 40 minutes after that because it's so important. But I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes or so on the anterior capsule. Have you even thought about the anterior capsule and its issues? Okay, so what are some of the issues we might need to think about? You want to talk a little bit about, the finer points of CCC. You learned how to do it yesterday. You'll be able to do it. But there are many other issues: size, shape, position. How do you know whether they're loose zonules? Radial tears. How do you protect your anterior chamber? And what's the relationship of the IOL to the anterior capsule? Now yesterday, I wanted to show this clip because yesterday we did capsulorectus and some of you had difficulties at some stages. And one thing we never think about is when you have a capsular flap there, and you can see how much it's standing up, where you hold that flap. Right? Now remember some of you were pulling the elastic flap. You didn't have room, there's no anterior chamber left for you to work with. Why? Because you see how far up the capsular flap can stand. You can't tell from that. But from this, you can see that if your flap is standing very, very high up, which we'll see again in a minute, if it's standing very, very high up and you hold it at the top of the flap, you're just going to run out of room in terms of where you let me just take this picture. If you're holding the flap up there, you don't have room left to pull. So I would always recommend you hold somewhere down here, nearer to the point of tear. So in other words, from here, you don't try to hold there, but try and hold nearer the point of tear. It just gives you enough room and leverage. Very simple, basic point, but worth thinking about. Now we all like our capsulorectus to look like that. Perfect 360-degree coverage of the rim of the IOL with a little bit. So this is probably like a 5 to 5.5 mm well-centered CCC. But you also know that we don't always get that. And here's a case in which this is one of my own cases from many years ago. And my incision is always temporal. And what do you see here? You see that I've got a very eccentric CCC. Right? It's to one side, you say, no big deal. And that is probably true, but what happens with an eccentric CCC is I give myself problems in subincisional IA. Think about it. If you're trying to go here and remove subincisional IA, how much more difficult is it? And as I pointed out yesterday, when I'm doing my pre-chop now with a sharp new pre-chopper, if I'm dialing the nucleus around or chopping here, I can actually chop the capsular rim more easily if I have an eccentric CCC. So again, the point to make, try and make your CCCs as well positioned centrally as possible, and that's where flex comes in. Flex obviously positions it much better. Here's another one that's not only eccentric, but is also on the small size, and you can get capsular phimosis, which lends itself to other problems, and of course an extreme case of phimosis. So if you start with too small a rexis and you get a fibrotic response, you're going to have problems with that anterior capsule. So now here, just a word or two about the IOL anterior capsule or the capsular bag relationship. Again, with this technology, I'm now being able to see that we've got the lens on the posterior capsule, and you can see that the lens is within the capsular bag. That's the anterior capsular flap here and here. Now, how much anterior capsule overlap do you have? Do you want? If you look at this case, I'm not sure where the capsule is, but my OCT shows that actually my IOL is only on the edge, barely covering it. And if I have shallowing of the anterior chamber, this lens could well pop up. So here you can see that with OCT, my overlap is not good. And you can see from here, you can see the edge here, but you can't see the edge there. So with the Sinsley Hope, I'm just dragging the lens to the left, and you will see that then positioning the IOL, that's better. Yeah, you can see that the edge of the IOL comes up here, and now I have got good overlap with the anterior capsular rim. So again, this is something that's worth paying attention to, and this new technology helps us. So I'm going to move on to this thing about radial tears, which we heard a little bit about yesterday and what I mentioned. If your rhexis is too small, you can tear it accidentally by chopping. Yesterday I showed you in one of my movies. If you use the splitter and you reach out on a small rhexis, you're going to tear the anterior capsular rim. The phaco tip, when you're pushing the nucleus around, or you're not careful, you can catch and get a scalloped edge of the anterior capsular rim, or as I said, with a pre-chopper. Now, why does this happen? It happens because once you've done your hydrodissection, right, and you start phacoing, the whole nucleus loses its clarity, the red reflex, and it's very hard to see the anterior capsular rim, which is why the quality, centration, and size of your CCC is very important. So what's the issue with radial tears? Does it really extend posteriorly? And Dr. Prakash taught us his sign called the flap motility sign. That says if you see an anterior radial tear and the flaps are standing up and flapping, usually means it hasn't gone behind. So let's look at this one. Okay, here's a patient. You can see there's a radial tear here, and on the OCT, you can see that the flap is standing up and up, different from the one that's flat just now when it's not torn. Okay, so this is the standing or everted flaps. Okay, what about this one? Okay, so you can see this one. There's a big radial tear here, which looks very scary, right? That's the edge, there's another edge, and again on the OCT, I'm just showing you that's the edge of this too, nicely everted, and again, if you believe Dr. Prakash's sign, when the flaps are standing up and they flap as you're doing the IA, you usually don't have a posterior extension. You see, if the anterior capsular rim is not torn, it's flat. Like this, like this, like this, because we're scanning over there. At the end of the day, when you put the lens in the bag, you be very careful, you position it gently. This is a toric lens. And whenever you've got an anterior radial tear, you just want to do everything slowly, even more gently, and making sure you don't cause an extension. Now yesterday we talked about dialing lenses. Somebody said they couldn't dial. That's because you didn't have the infusion going. When you want to dial a toric lens, you have to have the infusion going and dial, or you do it before you've removed the OVD. And here you'll see that as I'm removing my instrument, I have compression on the wound to avoid shallowing of the anterior chamber, which might then lead to an extension of the tear. Okay, so that's an important thing to do. Now here, let me show you this case. This was one of my residents doing the case. He finished it, but there was a problem. He said there's a radial tear there, and you can see that there's a radial tear there. So he asked me to take over. I said, fine, so I'll go over and so tell him just be very gentle. Most of the cortex is gone. There's still a little bit here, subincisional. So I'm just very carefully going next to the radial tear, clearing the cortex out, and just being as gentle as I can be. Because what you really don't want, you don't want this tear to extend around the back. Now again, when you go into the subincisional, you just got to be very careful you don't stretch that rim of the capsule too much. It seems to be getting away with that. And I think maybe just a little bit left here. Okay, and so you see the two flaps here. We'll see whether they flap about us. So you can see that's a flap there, and it's flapping about a little bit, which according to Prakash means that it hasn't extended. So I'm telling my resident there it is, be careful. And now we're just going to take the instrument out and watch. Did you see that? What happened? Anyone? Did you see what happened? I'll give you an action replay if I can.
Big rupture.
Okay, so here at the end, I didn't know, let's watch that. Posterior extension of a radial tear. You've all heard about it in theory, you don't see it very often. This happened to me, why? Because I was lazy. What didn't I do that I should have done? I didn't control the anterior chamber. I pulled it out and let the anterior chamber shallow, and that caused the posterior radial extension. Once that happened, you see the flaps disappeared. You no longer see the flaps once that's been done. So what do you do when you do that? Well, I cleared up the vitreous, organized it, and I was still able to put a 3-piece, single-piece IOL in the sulcus in this particular case. So let's just look at this case now, and I'm just going to show you in terms of the shallowing of the anterior chamber what we're talking about. So when we finish, I take it out, you can see the chamber shallows a bit. How much do you think is shallow? Doesn't look too bad, does it? That's the posterior capsule. That's how much shallowing you can get. Amazing, isn't it? You didn't think it was that bad. So that's not surprising. If you're allowing your eye to shallow as much as that, a radial tear extends posteriorly. Here's another one where you see after removing the instrument, the posterior capsule is way up there, not so bad. Here I'm going to show you when I put the IA back in, you will see that this then, how much it deepens by. Or I think I'm putting in OVD. So when I inject the OVD here, see the gaps getting bigger and bigger, and that line is no longer there because it's gone deeper and deeper. And you'll see the posterior capsule now appearing way back there. Okay. So the excursion of your posterior capsule is enormous. In radial tears, it's bad news. This excursion is bad news for the vitreous movement and vitreous traction on your retina as well. So this is an extreme example, of course. You've got the capsule here with the cortex way out there. That's something we want to prevent as far as we can. So how do we reduce abrupt shallowing of the AC when withdrawing irrigating instruments? Yesterday we learned from Prof. Chi how to hydrate the wound with trapezoidal injection. So that's right at the end. Right, this after IOL is in. I'm talking about after you finish phaco, after you finish IA. How do you protect your anterior chamber from shallowing? So here's what I often do, and I'll do it in these tricky cases. Inject air. Air is free, right? You pull it out, and then just before finishing IA, I will inject Provis here, just deepen it enough, and then you can remove it without the dramatic shallowing of the chamber. Then you can top it up a little bit. Why don't I use Provis for the first step after removing the phaco tip? Why? Because Provis is expensive. And if you put it in at that stage, you're going to IA, you're going to IA out all your Provis, but air is free. The other thing you can do before removing OVD after implantation is to just hydrate the wound first before going in to remove OVD. So here you can see I hydrated it first, and then I go in and remove the OVD from in front and behind the lens. Which sometimes when you come out, again the chamber will shallow and your lens will move up. So if you do this, you will also reduce the likelihood of the anterior chamber shallowing. And the other thing I do, of course, which I showed earlier, is when you come out, you can see there's still a bit of a shallowing, but it's a gentle one. It's not so abrupt. It's put your finger. I sometimes, as I withdraw, I'll put my finger or a cotton bud there, and that also helps protect the anterior chamber. You can see here, removing, pressing. In this case, I want to show you how extreme it can be. If you don't control it well, what's that? That's the edge of the IOL hitting the endothelium. Okay, and I'm showing you all this just to emphasize to you that protection of your chamber is very, very important. And again, we all see that nucleus coming forward, right, when you take out your IA handpiece. But does it come forward enough to hit the cornea? Obviously it does. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to leave you with that. Okay, so look after your anterior capsule, protect your chamber. Thank you very much.